Good morning, everybody. Today, I haven't seen this in a while, a dedication. Today's learning is Leilui Nishmat, Tzvi Alter ben Reb Avram, V'rayato Nocha Ela bas Reb Yitzchak Meir, Hashem Yikon Damam, B'yiladem Yud Official ben Reb Tzvi Alter, V'shifra Leah by Reb Tzvi Alter, Hashem Yikon Damam, by the Orenstein family, Elazar and Efrat and Ramot. Tehen Nishmasam Tzura B'tzura Chaim. Okay, so first of all, again, Yesha Koach to everyone for coming. Did the pages make it around? It did? Okay, very good. So today what we're going to be continuing, I'm probably going to be finishing, are these very, very, I don't know how to describe other than like loving, consoling, emunah, bitachon, filling words from the Nativot Shalom that have been helping us really hold on tight to the bitachon, that Bezrat Hashem, here in Eretz Yisrael, like he said, nothing has ever been normal in the past. So hashgacha-wise also, things don't work in a normal manner either, and therefore it's going to be fine here. It's going to be okay. Mamash. I will share with you the following, though, is that the more that I'm learning words from the Nativot Shalom about the hashgacha in Eretz Yisrael, it makes me more and more concerned about what's happening in Chutz La'aretz. And many of us have families there. And I just want to encourage everyone. I want to encourage everyone in a way that is divinely ordained for each and every one of you individually to speak about coming back to Eretz Yisrael more than you ever did. And you know what? It's not only because of how right now, thank you so much. It's not just only about because it's so crazy right now, right? That's not what it is. It's also Parshas Lech Lecha. So it's like, if there was ever a time to have like a real heart-to-heart conversation with someone, you could say, look, I could go from the front of like, it looks pretty insane out there. And it is. I'm born in Englewood, and I lived in Teaneck as a kid, and then I lived in Los Angeles. In all three places, I saw things my eyes would never, ever think they would see in their lifetime happening in these places. So I think that right now is the time for each of us to daven strong to Hashem, to give us the right words. To give us the right words to be able to share with our families and friends in Chutz La'aretz, that right now, it's not just about the right thing. It's what's needed to be done now. It's time to come home. It's time for everyone to come home. So, and I'm just saying this because as we're going to see today, you're going to think that the Nativot Shalom was working as like a spokesman for Bnei Akiva based on today's words, which he wasn't, I assure you. but it's crazy. Like what he says today is just so like, oh my gosh, like, I want to call Bnei Akiva and say to them, listen, in the Haredi world, there's a lot of stuff you really need to use for your own word. You ran out of words. Like, you ran out of words a long time ago. Like my wife and I were at a Mizrahi conference, Shabbos, I don't know how many years ago, it was in Tel Aviv, it was like 5 or 6 years ago. And the whole topic of the conference was, what do we do now that we succeeded very much, and the people we were talking to, most of them did come home, like 30, 40 years ago. Like, what's now the dibur? Okay, apparently there still are Jews in America. There's still a lot, there is still a lot to do, I think, as far as I know. And I hope and pray that we become shluchim ne'emanim of Eretz HaKodesh in the way and the manner that we speak about Eretz Yisrael right now more than ever. So again, the last thing that we learned in the last shiur was speaking about the word darosh shows up twice in the Torah. Remember, we were learning that the word darosh shows up twice. And whenever a word shows up only 2 times in the Torah, we learn out from each other what that meant. One of that had to do with the se'ir hachatat, that had to be fully burnt, v'hines saraf, and the other time that had to be fully burnt, and the other time that it speaks about the word darosh is the land of Eretz Yisrael, asher doresh ota tamid, that Hashem is always doresh Eretz Yisrael. And the Slonimer quoted his great-grandfather explaining that the concept of it seems that this country is always on fire is because of the drisha of the 2 psukim. It makes a lot of sense. This country is always on fire. This country is always burning up, whether we feel it or not. But so What's our relationship to that? How do you function in that kind of a status? How do you function like that? The only way to function here is through emunah, but what type of emunah? And he's been showing us over and over again about the way things work in Eretz Yisrael, which is different than the way things work in Chutz La'aretz, and that it's always been like this. So if you look at the bottom of the first page that you have in front of you, the bottom of page 15, we're picking up from there. Omnam ken, כשמתבוננים ומסתכלים על המוראות בארץ ישראל בעיניים פקוחות, when you open up your eyes for real and look about what has been unfolding in Eretz Yisrael. Remember, these words were said in 1984, but you may as well be saying it right now. When you open up your eyes and you look at what's happening in Eretz Yisrael with open eyes, אין צורך להסתפק באמונה גרידא. You don't just need like emuna greda, like being like, okay, I believe that despite what I'm seeing, everything's okay. Why? מכיוון שרואים בעליל שכל ענייני הארץ הזאת הם על טבעיים, because we see with our own eyes how everything is supernatural. ומתוך הסתכלות, like swamps becoming what they are today, like everything is supernatural in this country. The nature and the beyond nature, everything is supernatural. ומתוך הסתכלות זו גוף המתחזק ומתגבר בתוכנו כוח האמונה והביטחון בהבטחת ארץ אשר השם אלוקיך דורש אותה. And when I look at that, I realize the way that my emunah interplays here is also supernatural. Now, is emunah always supernatural? I don't know. Emunah, quite often, like think about how you've had to use emunah in your life until Simchas Torah, and how the role of emunah since Simchas Torah. Think about it for a second. What was the emunah? Like, what was the emunah? What was the usage of emunah? How was the emunah implemented? What was the emunah? What was the function of faith? Okay, it'll be okay with less money. Right? Or, gamzu letova, you would say about something. Emunah, right? The world of emunah, the concept of emunah has become something beyond this world for us. Since Simchas Torah, it's a different function of emunah.
That was the message then of the spies. Really? I mean, the supernatural
right.
of the fruits and the supernatural of the giants was really the prophecy of what's supernatural in our land.
That's how Rabbi Nachman darshans out the words of the prophets of the Meraglim. It's very good. They didn't even understand what they were saying. They were saying the deepest prophecy in the world, but they themselves didn't understand it, and they caused such fear in Am Yisrael, which led them to start crying. And then what ended up happening? What day was that? Tisha B'Av. די אם ניקח לדוגמה את 50 שנים האחרונות. He says, let's look at the last 50 years. Now, what's the last 50 years? From 1934 till 1984. That's what he's saying. Let's look at the last 50 years. תקופה שיכולתי בעזרת השם להעיד עליה כעד ראייה פה בארץ הקודש. The Slonimer Rebbe says, I could give testimony as someone that was here in the Holy Land. שכל כולן, the 50 years from 1934 till 1984, כל כולן שרשרת רצופה של מאורעות על טבעיים והתפתחויות בלתי צפויות. It's been a chain of unprecedented supernatural instances and unexpected developments. That's what it's been. That's what he says what it was for so many years. בבואנו לארץ לא היה מובן בדרך הטבע כיצד יוכלו יהודים לחיות ולהתקיים פה. When we came here, no one understood how it's possible to actually live here. הימים היו ימי מאורעות הדמים. It was days where a lot of Jewish blood was spilled. הרבה יהודים נהרגו בפרעות הערבים. Many Jews were killed with the praot, with they're just like the random pogroms that Arabs would just decide to get angry and start killing Jews. ובאותו זמן אסרו על יהודים לשאת נשק כדי להתגונן. And you know what else was going on back then? Before the state was, around? You weren't allowed to carry weapons. You couldn't protect yourself. ויהי דם ישראל כהפקר. Jewish blood was hefker. אחר כך פרצה השואה הנוראה. And then, look what developed in the world, 1939. The atrocities of Europe. אחר כך כשהאנגלים הצרו את צעדינו, then the Brits made it very difficult for us. ואחר כך במשך למ"ה שנה ניטשו פה 5 מלחמות עקובות מדם. And then for 35 years there have been, he says, 5 different wars that we went through so much. מלחמה אחת די בה כדי למוטט ארץ המדינה. On a natural level, one war should be enough to completely crumble down a tiny little country like ours. וכאן עברו על ארץ כל כך קטנה ודלה, לא פחות מ5 מלחמות. And we had 5 wars on such a small, sensitive piece of land. עד שהאדמה ממש ספוגה בדם יהודי. This land is ספוג, saturated with Jewish blood. ואף על פי כן, and nonetheless, בניגוד לכל התחזיות, נתקיים בנו, ואומר לך בדמי חיי. And despite everything, despite all the expectation from us of what would probably be, right? The forecasts, ואומר לך בדמי חיי, you will live through this blood that has been spilled. וארצנו הקדושה מוסיפה להיבנות ולשגשג, הולכת וגדלה, מתרחבת ומתפתחת משנה לשנה. And our holy land continues to be built with prosperity, growing and developing more and more from year to year. לכל החזון המרהיב הזה, אין שום הסבר טבעי. Don't try to rationally explain this, logically explain this to anyone. Okay, up until now, Bnei Akiva. And see, like, no, like, mamash, like, it's like amazing. This is amazing. Nefesh b'nefesh should, they need more, they're doing such, avodas hakodesh, take it out, you should call Rabbi fast and tell him, listen, there's like, chunks here from, a Haredi, a Hasidic Rebbe. Because these words are just so showing us, like, listen, it's supernatural. Just look at it. It'll always, that's the way it works here. That's the way it works here. Now, he also I want us to do this, the next paragraph, because now he speaks about the Yahadut HaCharedit. Look what he says, כיוצא בזה, אנו רואים גם במצב היהדות החרדית בארץ ישראל. And if you just want to see how beautiful we are, just look at what's going on in the Haredi community right now. Have you seen what's going on with the Haredi, our brothers and sisters? En dvarim kaelu. En dvarim kaelu. Up until Tuesday, 2,000 Haredi men have joined the Israeli army. And those that aren't are tying green tzitzit, they're tying the tzitziot. And the women now are also asking to be on parts of Kitot HaKonanut, even here in Beitar. Everyone's in. Everyone's in. So we see also with the situation of the Yahadut HaCharedit בארץ ישראל. רק לפני דור אחד, חוששים היינו פן תשתכח חס ושלום תורה מישראל. Listen, there was a real fear that Torah will be forgotten from Am Yisrael after the Germans, right? It was they took from us, not just they burnt books, they burnt walking shasas. They burnt walking Talmidei encyclopedias. המצב הרוחני היה בשפל המדרגה, the spiritual state was in the lowest. רבים מבני הדור הצעיר נסחפו בזרמים החילוניים רחמנא ליצלן, and many from the next generation said, listen, if zot Torah v'zot schara, I'm out of here. And no one can blame him. ועד שאחד ממייסדי המדינה התרבב בביטחון גמור, כי שאלת החרדים תיפתר במשך דור אחד. בדור הבא כבר לא יישארו חרדים. And it's true. And this is something we're speaking a lot about after the davening every single day. Within the Tikkun HaMedina, it's all Rav Ginsburg's Torah as well, like within the way the Medina that could be such a plea for Kedusha, we need such a deep reform, because within the establishment of the State of Israel, I don't want to say names right now, but one of the top leaders of the founding of this country, the way it is today, said, listen, don't worry about the Haredi problem now, because next door there won't be Haredim anymore. Because he was under the impression that it'll be like they'll be in a museum, there'll be exhibits in a museum of what? Huh? Yeah, they'll all become enlightened, and a kilu, like it won't be, not chas v'shalom, they're gonna kill them, God forbid, no. They'll kilu, like, they'll see the light, and then they'll realize, זה חלק מהעבר. אך הנה, ברוך השם, נתקיים בנו וכאשר יענו אותו, כן ירבה וכן יפרוץ. But ההפך הגמור has happened. צמח וגדל לנו דור הילולים לנוי ותפארת. we have a generation of thousands and thousands and thousands of people that, bless you, that are learning Torah Yamam V'Layla. What a beautiful thing. What a protective thing. Hikimu alfei batim Yehudim ksherim be'en tzvacha b'feretz. The Jewish and kosher homes they've established. Nit'orera tnu'a mufla'a shel ba'alei tshuva. ומשמיים סיבבו הסיבות שהביאו לצמיחת היכלי תורה, הישיבות הקדושות והחינוך התורתי לכל זרועותיו. Just look at how many yeshivas there are today throughout the land. How much Talmud Torah takes place every single moment in Eretz Yisrael. עד שלנגד עינינו מתרחש הפלא הגדול ואנו משתאים לראות איך קם ונהיה בדיוק ההפך ממה שציפו וקיוו מייסדי המדינה. He's saying we see that there's some people that, the ones that founded the state, the exact opposite of what they thought and were hoping for to take place is taking place. ושוב מתברר לנו כי ארץ ישראל היא ארץ אשר עיני השם בה והכל פה מתנהל שלא כדרך הטבע. He's saying that function, the fact that there is so much learning in Eretz Yisrael, you have to understand that's keneged hateva as well. That's absolutely beyond nature. That's supernatural. And, you know, I don't want anyone here to have any negative thought about any Jew. It's easier for us to always malamed zchut on the Yidden that we say they're tinakot shenishba. We should really look at our brothers and sisters in the Haredi communities that have established Heichalei Kedusha L'Tiferet. There's always going to be individuals that always do a bad name amongst us as well. They're yechidim. But as a klal, Ashreinu Matov Chelkeinu. But what his point here is, what he's trying to say to us is that that's supernatural. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't add up either. It's a me'al teva. That's beyond nature.
Can you clarify what you mean by the opposite effect? When you said the founders of our country had the opposite idea of how it would evolve?
Yeah, many of the founders of the country, like I said, were sure, and they were hoping that this thing called the Haredi Jew, or the one that lives his life, through Torah and learning Torah, v'chulei, would be an exhibit in a museum of something that's shaykh to the past. Rav Kook wasn't startled by that. I mean, he wasn't around in the founding of the state, but because he died 13 years before. But he knew that that's just the outside talking. He knew the inside talk. The inside neshama could never really mean the words that may come out like that. And that explains a lot about how Rav Kook emerged as Rav Kook. And there's a lot of different pieces. Specifically, one of the Ma'amarim of Rav Kook, which is called Ma'amar Hador. I think we learned this a long time ago in Miriam's house. So it'd be great to go back to that Ma'amar. I think we did, right? Was it? Yeah. Ma'amar Hador. Wow. What an amazing Ma'amar. Okay, so beseder. So up until now, what have we learned? Everything here is hanaga al tivit. It's all supernatural. Beseder. But now we have to go further. Now we have to understand deep in our hearts right now, for those of us that are living here, we have to understand the deep concept of hanaga, the way things work with God's hanaga in Eretz Yisrael. And he's going to explain, he's like, I know everything. Basically what he's saying is, I know everything I could tell you, that everything here works supernaturally. How does that calm down the worried mother? Great, it's all supernatural, and it's part of it is like, part of the deal is the suffering. But how does it calm down the worried mother, the worried father, the worried child? Like Lamaisa. Like, how does it work? I'm just going to freak them out for a second and ask them to, I don't want it to. Call me Shamayim. Call me Shamayim. Al TV. No. People are dealing with. It's exactly this. Like, how do we calm down the place? That nekuda of mamash, with all the emuna that things here work supernaturally. Because lemaisa, that's where you and I are at. That us that are here, we need to internalize this concept of hanaga al tivit. So look at the bottom of Gimel. ויש להבין מעט ביתר עמקות את פשר ההנהגה האלוקית המיוחדת לארץ ישראל. המצב התמידי ששורר בה בבחינת והנה שורף. let's understand something. Why is it, and how do we relate to a state of mind of v'hineh soraf, that it's always burning, that it's always on fire? Like, was it ever not on fire here? Only on our illusion was it not on fire here. It was always on fire. It always was. Until Mashiach comes, it's always going to be. Nachon? I guess if you trace back, I think we spoke about this the other day, if you go back as far as possible, right? When was the last time in Eretz Yisrael it wasn't on a level of Ve'hineh Soraf? Shlomo HaMelech. No? Was there ever another time that this Ve'hineh Soraf wasn't the state of being here? So he's saying, let's call it for what it is. So how do we deal with that? How does our emunah really be shalev, become with that? How is that possible? V'chol hasevel v'yisurim shenikrechu b'yeshivat b'Eretz Yisrael, all the pain that dwelling in Eretz Yisrael brings with it. Ki hineh Eretz Yisrael nimshela. So this is like one of my favorite pieces I ever learned, and you'll see why. It basically explains to me everything that I struggle with and everything that I daven or everything. Ki hineh Eretz Yisrael nimshela leplatrin shel melech. You know what that means? Eretz Yisrael is like the platrin. What's a platrin? The palace of the king. Hachaim b'platrin shel melech kshurim miteva advarim b'arbe me'od chovot. If you're dwelling in the palace of the king, you have a lot of chovot. You owe a lot. You owe a lot. Al kol dibur she'ata motzi me'al peh v'al kol pe'ula she'incha oseh b'platrin atidin liten et adin. If the king sees you acting in a non-menschlichkeit way in the palace of the king, oy va'avoy. Now you understand more the Slonimer Rebbe and all the tzaddikim, the mooncatcher, all those that were frightened from Zionism for the holiest reasons, because they understand the kedusha of the Platrin Shel Melech, and they understand what happens when there's chovot mitztabrim in the Platrin Shel Melech. It's not just you come here and you do what you want because you finally have a place to just not be killed. That's also not true. We're in the palace of the king. ויש באנשים בני בינה שהכל כדאי להם, כל הסבל והקשיים, ובלבד שיזכו לחיות בפלטרין של מלך. And there are those, he calls them bnei bina, meaning like, when do we say that? Bnei bina, besides the children in my home, right? Bnei bina, who are we referring to? The Maccabim. What did the Maccabim have? They said it's worth the fight if it means that we still have a relationship with God and we still have a Beis HaMikdash. Even if the Mamlacha, even if everything else is crumbled, what was going on in society here in the Jewish status here was already Mukom and Bulgan. They said, but I'll do anything. It's Bnei Binar, people that are saying it's all worth it. Every ounce of pain is worth it as long as I have the zchut to live in the palace of the king. בדומה לזה, היהודים היושבים בארץ ישראל ממרקים ומזככים אותם בכדי שיהיו ראויים להימצא בפלטרנו של מלך מלכי המלכים. This is very hard for us to understand. But he says, us that are living here, the prices we've paid in order to dwell here, to live here. He says this is all some kind of a refinement in order to justify the experience of living in the palace of the king. And here we go back to Bnei Akiva 101. יהודי המתגורר בחוץ לארץ, אפילו כשיש לו כל טוב בגשמיוס וברוחניוס, אינו מסוגל להרגיש בנוח בשום אופן. אחרי שהנה הוא מרוחק מפלטרין של מלך. In the heart of that Yid, you can never, with all the comfort in the world, you could never really be comfortable because at the end of the day, you're not living in the palace of the king. לעומתו, יהודי הדר בארץ ישראל, אף שתמיד פוקדים אותנו כל מיני מאורות ומשברים. A Jew living here, despite all the atrocities and pain and crisis that are coming on us. או שאנו עומדים ערב מלחמה. We're either in a state of ערב מלחמה, או שאנחנו ממחרת המלחמה. he's saying this in 1984, right? Afilu b'matzav ha'milchamti sheben milchama le'milchama, or in the status of ben hazmanim, right? Ben hazmanim of war. Yesh gam yisurim lemachbir be'inyanei parnasa, and parnasa we know. Even though we know that Hashem can make anyone a millionaire, we also know that there are plenty of people that suffer from parnasa problems. Ach ma me'od metukim kol yisurim alalu yisurei Eretz Yisrael. Kshe'anu chayim be'emuna u'be'argasha, ki hinenu be'platrin shel melech. Ashreinu matov chelkenu, ve'lo namir ota gam ba'ad kol tuv Eretz ha'amim. The Slonimer Rebbe says, would you ever give this up? Would you ever give up? Of course we'd give up the pain in us instantly. But I think what he's saying here is something so profoundly deep. He's saying, would you ever give up living your meaningful life the way that you live a meaningful life here in Eretz Yisrael? When you understand the consciousness is that you're in the Platarin Shel Melech, that you're in the Heichal HaMelech. How could you find a different, a more meaningful world to live in than living with the consciousness of what it takes to live in the Platarin Shel Melech, in the palace of the king? So there's a lot we could say on this statement because it's such a loaded paragraph, but it's for you and I to understand something. We're getting the calls all day long from our friends and family. How are you guys holding up? And you want to break the whenever you get that message, it strikes a chord, and you can't even explain what is that exactly? Like what is, and we also know it's only out of love and concern. It's not chas v'sholom anything else. It's real love and concern. But what is it? It's because we want everyone to live in the Platarin Shel Melech. Because we know that we're not really, really fully living here until the whole mishpacha is back home in the Platarin Shel Melech. That's where it's coming from. The problem is we have to always be, we're always so careful, we mince words, and we don't want to say it, Like I'm thinking every single day I'm davening, and at a certain shachar or mincha, I was davening to Hashem, give me the right response to because I'm, like all of us, I get that like 25 times a day. Like I want the right response. So, one day I just wrote and I had a generic message, Ki mechakim anachnu lach. That was my answer to every single, So some people said, I'm sorry, I think you meant this is, by accident, this message was for someone else. Like thinking that What's that? I know. I know. I hope that I think they do want to be here. I believe that they do want to be here. Yeah, and we have to tug on that nikuda, like they do. They, how could you not? Like if you learn a piece like this, I'm saying like, listen, what's life worth living for? Like lemaisa, what is life worth living for? What is it worth living for? Like you all know we went away this past summer, right? The whole family for a month out in a place that is so therapeutic up in northern Ontario. I just look at a picture, I feel like I went to a psychiatrist for an hour. It's like, mamash, it is so therapeutic. Never in my wildest dreams could I imagine choosing to dwell there, nor could the Baalei Abayit either, just to put it out there. Like they're on their way here too. In terms of like what is life worth living, like a Jew en malasot, our life is only worth living in the context of my emunah. That's the context of what's worth living. That's the whole thing. Now, there's another tzad that he doesn't bring up here, but that's the tzad that we know, and we have reshut from Moshe Rabbeinu. To like, as we're saying, Hashem, listen, we're in the Platarin Shel Melech. We're here. And we're not going anywhere. But Hashem, lama yomru bagoyim ayeh Elohem. Ribono shel olam. And the same token, and the same breath that I'm saying, I'm here, I'm now 43, I've been going to Levayas that I can remember since I'm 13. Shiva house after Shiva house. Like, nachon. It's all word, the chule, but you could do anything, Hashem. You could do anything. And that has to be part of my tefillah. While I'm understanding the hashgacha of Eretz Yisrael, the hashgacha of Eretz Yisrael isn't based on like this saying, listen, it always was like this, and it'll always be like this. The good is supernatural, the bad is supernatural, keep on flowing. That means that and I'm just a robot. That can't be what Hashem wants of me. That can't be my job in this world. My job in this world is to bring about a kol tzedakah. Noach, that was his job in the world. Noach sees how God acts. He's about to do something completely supernatural, and his response is nothing. Avram Avinu is the exact opposite. And next week, when we learn about the Parsha of Sdom, we see exactly how Avram Avinu responds to what's going to be a supernatural level of choshech coming into the world, or of light, because there was the destruction of evil, and he's trying to, interact with that. Like living this life of fully fueled with my emunah and the Hashgacha of Eretz Yisrael isn't just a level of there's a statement. I didn't understand this till like in 6th grade we had here in Israel we had yearbooks. In 6th grade here. In America it's 8th grade, right? Yearbooks? You remember yearbooks? They still have yearbooks? Yeah. Yeah. High school. Well, your husband told me, yeah.
My husband has his, and he's
yeah. So yearbook. So we had this little yearbook, and I remember one of the kids in my class, I didn't realize how much we weren't close, because their comment about our relationship was, Avarnu et paro na'avor gam et zeh. Which is a statement saying, listen, we've been through Paro, we'll get through anything, right? Meaning like being with you like was being with Paro, we made it through, and we're continuing now in life, like words of chizuk, right? That's not, I'm not taking that from the Slonimer Rebbe. I'm not taking from him this notion of like, listen, the supernatural status of how it's been here, this is what it was, and this is how it's going to be. We not just have reshut, we have an obligation to protest Hashem, especially after the 6 million, especially after Simchas Torah. Aseh leman chaim lo lemanenu. Aseh leman chavo shienu. Yes, I can understand. I'm in this, Hashem. I'm in. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. Anywhere. None of us are going anywhere. We're not going anywhere. You know this already, Hashem Yisbarach. You know, maybe there's 10 Yidden that could say we're not going anywhere, but do it for your name's sake. And Hashem Yisbarach, there aren't 10 Yidden that are saying this. There are hundreds of thousands of Jews that are saying this, that are trying so hard to grab onto to understand the pnimius of what it means to live in Platri and Shel Melech, in the palace of the king. How many? Late last night, I went out to my porch, and I looked out towards, Beit Lechem, Mama Rachel, Yerushalayim, and I thought to myself, right now I know that the Slonimer Rebbe is alive and he lives in Yerushalayim. And that Rav Yaakov Meir Shechter is alive and he lives in Yerushalayim. And there's so many righteous tzaddikises that are, right now, after putting 80 kids to sleep, are now getting to their tehillim. Aseh lemanam. Like, there's so many moments that we could say this now. Right? With bitachon, in the way that hashgacha works here, is different than where it works anywhere else in the world. Zot omeret, and this is maybe a deeper approach to the beginning of the shir, when you speak about Eretz Yisrael, right? When you speak about Eretz Yisrael to those that it's time to come home, what's the tone? It's the right thing. Jewish pride. That was good from 1945 to like 1994, maybe. I don't know, early 90s. The notion of aliyah, of coming back to Eretz Yisrael nowadays, is the next shlav. It's the next shlav of how we speak about Eretz Yisrael, the pnimius of Eretz Yisrael. Why do we have a whole machon based on the pnimius of Torah Eretz Yisrael? Because if we're going to be speaking about Eretz Yisrael, it's got to be with the times that we're living in. Chayav liot, it has to be with the times. Like these last few words he says here, Lo namir ota gam bad kol tuv eretz ha'amim. We'll never, ever, ever exchange the experience of fighting for the zchut to live in the palace of the king for any good that exists in the whole world. And there's a lot of good in the whole world. Many of us were very comfortable out there in the world. We would never exchange it for anything in the world. It's impossible to explain it to someone. Let's say someone that's looking to get married, and he has a friend that's already married. But the person that's single, is hard for him to give up on some of the perks of being single, right? And then the person that's married is trying to explain to him what it's like to not even care about those perks anymore because of the status that they're in, that they're being married, right? How do you explain that to someone unless they get married? How do you explain that? How do you give that over? I look at the same, I always feel like Eretz Yisrael, it's the same exact. How do you explain that vitality? How do you give that over? We have to daven to Hashem and clean out any mechitzas between us and other Yidden in order to be able to be the type of shluchim that today's dor needs, that today's generation needs, to be fully in on this inyan. And that's how the Slonimer Rebbe has been explaining to us this like constant tiskoret of, and he gives a lot of different examples here in the rest of this letter about understanding how things work here. But I want to go, if you go back, stay on that page. Go to page 17. We're on 17. Go to the bottom. ואף גם זאת שמלבד עניין הזיכוך כאמור למעלה. Besides the refinement of that happens from all the pain that we go through, משמשים לנו ייסורי ארץ ישראל גם כאין תזכורת תמידית על השגחתו יתברך הפרוסה על ארץ ישראל. We're in constant reminder that things don't work here like they work in other places, is that Hashem's hand is always here. Tzadikim amru. This is a beautiful Torah. Tzadikim amru beperusha katuv va'anachash afar lachmo. Remember the snake? The snake gets punished, right? What's the punishment of the snake? He eats the dust. And everyone has a hard time understanding how is that a punishment? They always have what they need. It's a famous Torah, like a famous question. How is that an onesh? So al derech pnimius hasidus, there's one way of understanding it, and it says like this. It says that, when you always have what you need, you have nothing, or like when you always have what you think you need is essential for you, then everything is nothing because there's no meaning anymore, right? So it's always there. There's nothing. Like look at the world. People that have everything to them it means nothing. That's kind of like on one level of like the nachash. The curse is that what you need is always right in front of you, and then you miss the whole point of life of striving, of trying, of looking for something. And what happens to a person that's in the search mode, as opposed to a person that's always in a state of finding. That's one way of understanding it. But he says here something amazing. Shelichora ino, on the top of 18. Lichora ino onesh el aschar. This seems like this is not a punishment. This is a reward to the snake. Sheparnasato mezumenet lo b'archava b'chol makom. The snake always has what it wants, what it needs. Sharei ha'afar matzui b'chol ha'olam u'lelo hagbala. Is there a shortage of dust in the world? Ach lamito shel davar ze gufo ha'onesh. But actually, this is actually the punishment. HaKadosh Baruch Hu kivyachol eino rotze lishmoa anchato shel hanachash. You know what God doesn't want to ever hear? He doesn't want to hear a krechts of a snake. I don't want to hear from you, Bichlal. So you always have what you need, because the onesh is I don't want to hear you. Halacha mezonot beshefa. Take whatever you need. Bilvad shelo tashmi'a kol hanacha utchina lakadosh baruch hu. Take whatever you need. It's always right there. Don't ever let out this cry to me, because when someone cries to me, it's the most precious sound in the world. And a snake, the introduction of everything deceitful in this world, your punishment is that you don't have a voice. You don't have an anacha. I'm going to give you everything you ever need so that your experience in this world is void of me, kiviyachol, or void of the need to be in a relationship, so to speak. Vehu asher dibarnu benogea le'eretz Yisrael. And this is what we're talking about when it comes to Eretz Yisrael. Bevadai yesh hashgacha pratis b'chol ha'olam. Of course, God runs the whole world. Aval be'eretz Yisrael ha'anaga hi miyuchedet b'mina. Here, it's so different. HaKadosh Baruch Hu bichvodo uve'atzmo manhig ota. God Himself, in a galui way, is running the show. V'lechach ze be'ofen al TV, which explains why it's so supernatural. V'lachen מסבב הסיבות שתמיד נהיה תלויים בו יתברך. The way God orchestrated the relationship and the hashgacha of Eretz Yisrael is the exact opposite of the nachash. We are in a constant status of ki mechakim anachnu lach, of waiting for you, of needing you. And anytime we try to work here in Eretz Yisrael without this constant anacha, we get whacked again and again and again and again. Ve'ene kol elecha yisaberun. Every eye is looking to you constantly. Ve'lo niyeh kanachash asher afar lachmo, the Slonimer Rebbe says. Us here in Eretz Yisrael and the experience of going through life here is the tikkun of the nachash. That's how he explained it. ואם בכל מקום אחר עלול בשר ודם לטעות כאילו אינו זקוק לעזר ממרום, there are places in the world that maybe you think I don't really need godly, heavenly, divine support and help right now. הוא יודע להסתדר בכוחות עצמו. I could do it on my own. בכל תפילתו היא ריבונו של עולם, אל באפך תוכיחני. And his whole tefillah is, Hashem, just don't תוכיחני. Admonish me, thank you, with your apcha, with your anger. That's my whole relationship. Al tanisheni b'maka bilti tzfuya. Don't patch me with some kind of unexpected patch. Harekan be'eretz Yisrael hinenu chayim tamid b'tfilah l'ribono shel olam. Here, the way we live is a constant tefillah of al taster panecha mimeni. Don't hide your face from me. Ba'argasha ki anu tluyin lachalutin b'chasadav yitbarach. With the feeling that we are completely dependent on Hashem's chesed, u'me'achalim, ki chas v'sholom lo tisater meitanu ha'ashgacha elyon, af lo l'rega katon. All we're asking here is Hashem Yisbarach, never ever hide your face. We're not just saying, don't hurt me. Don't give me a patch. We're saying, don't hide your face from me. David HaMelech says, and as far as I know, he was Israeli. He started panecha ayiti nivhal. The second that there's a hester panim, from this hashgacha, I freak out. I need to be in constant dialogue with you, Hashem, every second. Let me ask you, logically speaking right now, does it make human sense that any of us feel the need to be closer to Hashem after what happened on Simchas Torah? The logical, rational mind would lead us to run as far away from a relationship with a koach that could allow such a thing to happen. Nachon? Can you explain it to yourself? You can't. And no Jew has ever been able to explain this to ourselves rationally. We're operating from a completely different place. That a second of Hester Panim freaks the daylights out of me. כך הוא באמת הדבר גם במציאות. This is the way it is also in reality. שבעל הבירה מציץ עלינו תמיד, ומבשר לנו אני בעל הבירה, to connect to the beginning of this letter. He says this is the way it is really in reality as well, that the Baal Abira, the one that's running the show, is constantly, he knows, he hears the question that our neshama is asking all day long, that at times you and I get exposed to. Right? We have a question that all of us are asking all day long. It's the question from the Midrash on this parsha, that Avram Avinu was looking at the world, he sees a palace, he sees it's on fire, and he's asking who's running the show. We see the palace, the Platerin, Eretz Yisrael is on fire, and we're asking, it's just now we can hear a little bit louder, but really we're always asking who's running the show, and Hashem is always answering, Ani Baal Abira, HaMashgiach Kan Tamid Be'ein Pekucha. Be'ein Pekucha. This is constantly under control. I know it looks like it's not, but it's constantly under control. Everything that you see and everything that you don't see. Everything you see and everything that you don't see. You know what? I feel like the greatest compliment you can give to anyone that like is doing something in this world is when you thank them so much for the stuff that you know they're doing and for all the stuff you don't know that they're doing. Because that shows a sign of like true appreciation to all the stuff you have no idea that a person is doing as well. So when it comes to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, al achas kama v'chama, right? All the more so. Uleor ma shenitpa'er. So now he's ending off, and he's setting us off with the strength that we need to continue the experience of being a Jew that lives in Eretz Yisrael. And he wrote this 40 years ago, and he may as well be saying this tomorrow. Uleor ma shenitba'er, based on what has been explained. En shum siba liyoshvei Eretz HaKodesh liot mud'agim ma'amatzav hanochechi. There's no reason, and the Rav Shlomo Rebbe would say this to everyone that used to come to him during Zmanei Milchama. There's a lot of different pieces that Chabad has put out of, worried parents and worried grandparents, and the Rebbe is always speaking about this, about being here. It's going to be fine. Kimamar hakatuv me'otot hashamayim al techatu. Because the pasuk tells us we're operating here from a different otot hashamayim. We were operating here from a completely different place. Hakoach hasguli al tivi shel Eretz Yisrael. What Eretz Yisrael is all about. Va'emunah she'enei Hashem ba mireshit v'ad acharit shana. Tshuva nitzachat hema l'chol ha'da'agot v'kushiyot. The only answer we have is the answer that Hashem's eyes are in Eretz Yisrael from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, meaning that it's always there. Now, I just have to say this because this is my achrayut that I feel more than ever. On the lines of giving a lot of chizuk constantly, but trying my best, I also believe very much right now in being very clear and understanding what the avodah of the tikkun of the Medina is as well. There are people that have been, some of them are not in the world anymore, that were very big presences here in terms of the character of the state of Israel. And many of them have done some very, very serious damage to not to Nishmas Am Yisrael, because no one can touch that. But there was an attempt here to make their words the Singapore of the Middle East. That kind of talking is counter to the whole notion of why we're here. We're not here to make it the Singapore of the Middle East. We're here to make it a Beit Tfilah L'Kol Ha'amim. That's what we're back here to do. A house of prayer for all nations. That's the real purpose of why we came back and started building everything. So as much as we're like Beseder, the Chizuk, it's going to be good and everything, but we have, you think you're tired now? You think you're tired now? You think you're exhausted now? We have this amazing moment in our lives right now where we're seeing so clearly that the avodah of the tikkun within the Medina has never been more crucial, never been more essential. And we're in such a beautiful time right now because there's no one in the country that believes that the current Hanagah should last another moment. So it's like there really is no left or right anymore. It's like everyone's waiting for a Ruach Hadashah. And I want all of Am Yisrael to be part of that Ruach Hadashah. I want Beverly Hills, Cedarhurst, Springfield, everything. They're already part of the Ruach Hadashah. Muncie isn't. That's my point. They already are. Fourth line, Anu ma'aminim be'emunah shlema sha'aratzon ha'elyon hu shebe'eretz Yisrael yichyu Yehudim achshav ba'ofanim halalu dafka. We believe with perfect faith that for some reason the Ratzon ha'elyon is that this is how we go through our lives living in Eretz Yisrael like this. Mesabevim min hashamayim b'hashgacha pratit asher ish Yehudi achai be'eretz Yisrael yitztarech liot tamid talui berachma v'yizbarach. This is the way it works, is that Hashem created the situation of us living in Eretz Yisrael, is that we are in constant dependency on His rachmim. You could look at that as such a Rahmanas, or you could look at that as the greatest and most revealed chesed from Hashem. Do you hear that? What I just said? It's a very heavy statement. But either you experience this constant dependency on Hashem's chesed as a torturous way of living, or you realize that that's the greatest revelation ever of living a godly life in Eretz HaKodesh. And that's why you have some big tzaddikim that are running to every army base, and with all the koach they're giving them to be warriors and fighters, and everyone's saying Leman ha'am sheli, Leman ha'medina sheli. There's this other word that has to be put into the lexicon. Leman shmo be'ahava. Leman shmo be'ahava. Once that's in, game over. Once that becomes the reason why we go out and fight over what we fight for, it's over. Gamalno. And that's our job. That's the hashlama that's left for us to put into the fabric of Israeli society. By the way, the chayalim they're there. And you just say those words, you don't understand. They're there. They're there. They're there. They're open. Last night I checked in on one of them that I've been having a lot of conversations with, thinking like maybe he needs some chizuk and everything. He says to me, "Achi, ani naul." That means like I'm locked in. Like zeo, anachnu neulim. It's neulim. We got it. Like zeo. U'chsheyesh emuna en makom ledaga. And when we all know when there's emuna, there's no room for worry. En lidog mipnei matzav kalkali. No need to worry about finances. Because this is a land that Hashem is always demanding out, calling out. Even when it seems to you that it's in a state of everything's on fire. And there's no way, there's no reason to get caught up in despair. Also spiritually. Do not despair. It's very easy to despair when you look spiritually at what's going on. Or like the influences of other spiritual circles and getting all mixed up. There's an en makom liyush. Tzarich ladat she'Eretz Yisrael hi b'fchinat kol tinofet lo yitanfucha. That any type of tinofet, any type of I need help. Slime. What's that? Like disgust. Filth. Yeah. Any type of filth that exists in the world can't come and filth you up. And from all the negative appearances that exist in the world, they can't take away from a second from the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael and its skula that's in this world. So I'm going to give us a bracha, Yiratzon, that these words, these really, really powerful words from the Slonimer Rebbe, they sink in deeply. If any of you want, remember this is one letter from a few that I have in a booklet. Anyone that wants I have it in a PDF, anyone that wants the actual booklet, just tell me, like I'll send it out. It's Dvarim Chashuvim Beyoter. May we have enough guts to beg Hashem to cry as if we're crying for someone to not get killed right now, that we cry just as hard to hold on to the achdus that we feel right now. And that should be the tefillah every single day, Bezrat Hashem. All right, good Shabbos, everyone. Should be a good Shabbos. Thank you for coming.